But especially as we get started into this new year, we're really going to be focused in on this idea of a mindset-first approach to leading in AI literacy in our schools. What does that mean and how do we break that down? And I'm so excited because Tricia, being Tricia, always comes up with some kind of great framework around how do we frame these mindsets. All right, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Schools. So excited and happy new year, Tricia, to 2026. I hope you had a good, relaxing holiday or some time off anyway.
I did. Yeah, I got really playful. I tried to make my first ice sculpture.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I would still call it an ice sculpture, but I did some free play with ice, maybe is the more gentle, more authentic and honest way to describe it. What about you, Jeff? How did you bring in the new year?
A lot of family. We had family here for almost a month straight. So my wife and I, by the end of it, we're counting down the time away. But yeah,
that's
just
a different kind of marathon.
Yeah, different kind of marathon. But yeah, good family time. A lot of time to just sit and relax and catch up with family for sure. What was your best present over the holiday?
You're going to laugh when I answer this. So I have a friend in the neighborhood who is a real health aficionado. Okay. So anytime we're walking the dogs together and talking, we're talking about like nutrition news that we've heard of. And I kept hearing actually from Dr. Michael Greger, who was recently on the show, the power of purple sweet potatoes. And I said to my friend, like, I just can't find them at any of the supermarkets here.
Oh no.
She found purple sweet potatoes at a supermarket and gifted me a few for the holiday. And totally, like, I cannot believe the words coming out of my mouth, but purple sweet potato was my top gift this year. Can you top that? That's a difficult
that's a
one
tough
to
one.
top.
That's a tough one to top. Yeah, for sure. You're just gonna roll your eyes at this one. I got a portable welder.
Wow. Okay. How big is this thing?
It's not very big. This is the thing. Okay. They're only like, I don't know, $50 or $70 now. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law got it for me. And they're like handheld. They're work on a 110. Like just the idea of a welder being that small blows my mind. I have not welded since high school. You know, growing up on a farm, we welded all the time. My dad was a welding teacher. I don't need a welder because my brother is a professional welder, so I don't really need it. But it was one of those things where you don't know you need something until you have it. So I'm excited. I'm almost to the point where I want to break something just to use it. But I also know, and you know my wife as well, she will find a way for me to use it very, very quickly. So I don't think
I'm imagining, is this going to be in the car and then you'll see a welding emergency while you're out and you can pull over?
Yeah, you literally could plug it into your car outlet and use a welder. I mean, yeah, I don't know. So I'm excited. That was my fun toy, right? Something I didn't need, but was great to have. So yeah, great holiday season and glad to be here in 2026 as we launch, another year of Shifting Schools together. I'm very excited for that and honored that you continue to put up with me and everything we're doing here at Shifting Schools. So I appreciate that. A new calendar year always invites big questions. What do we want more of? What do we want to leave behind? And how do we want learning and living to actually feel this year?
As January begins, there's a pull towards resets and resolutions, but instead of just adding more goals or more pressure, what if we started the year by making space for creativity and joy? That's exactly what Crayola Creativity Week is about. It's happening from January 26th through February 1st. It's a free global invitation to begin the year differently, with imagination, play, and creative expression at the center. Crayola Creativity Week offers 7 days of simple, hands-on creative experiences with easy-to-use activities, short videos, and resources designed to bring curiosity back into classrooms, homes, and communities.
Because how we start the year matters. Creativity helps us set a tone of possibilities, not perfection. If you're looking for a meaningful way to begin the year with your students and yourself, this is a great place to start. To learn more and sign up, go to Crayola.com/creativityweek. as we head into 2026, you and I have been talking now for the last couple of days as we're preparing the podcast for this year. What are we seeing around specifically AI? What are we seeing around education right now? And the more we talk, the more we kept coming back to this idea of mindset. Talk a little bit about where this is coming from your perspective.
So I think, it's interesting, Jeff, because we're only a few days into the new calendar year, but you and I have already delivered a session together on AI. And I think really what I would love to see more educators come together around when it comes to AI literacy this year is understanding the tech is secondary. And, you and I have been through multiple disruptions in the past. And I think it's just, can we learn from history? It's never about the tool. And right. Even, in our gift example, the gift wasn't the sweet potato. The gift wasn't the portable welder. It's you love to fix things. You love to make things. You love to understand how things work.
Yeah.
You've got that like engineering mindset.
Yeah.
I am just very weird and I want to try to cook different recipes. Yeah. But, like that creative piece for me, like that, that gift acknowledged that. And so I think whenever we're in, a new period of some kind of disruption to the way that we do school, it's let's come back to some of those core pieces. Why do we do what we do? Why do we even have school?
Yeah, that's right.
And how can
why do we love being a teacher? Like, what is it that brings us to the classroom every day, right?
How do we learn best? Yeah. And, can we reconnect ourselves with that and realize tools are going to continue to change? I mean, if somebody is listening to this episode 3 or 4 years out, I have no doubt, like there's already something else that's creating a big disruption. And you're going to have to come back to mindset. When we return to that, I think that's where we kind of get like a good grip when you're doing rock climbing, right? You got to find that foothold.
Yeah.
And I think mindset is how you do that.
I love it. And again, as you and I have talked and again, already done some trainings here in 2026, we keep coming back to this idea of mindset. And so over the next couple months here on the podcast and probably for much of 2026, I think much of this year, we're going to be focused on mindset for sure. But especially as we get started into this new year, we're really going to be focused in on this idea of a mindset first approach to leading in AI literacy in our schools. What does that mean and how do we break that down? And I'm so excited because Tricia being Tricia always comes up with some kind of great framework around how do we frame these things, frame these mindsets. And so you have come up with the BAKE framework. Can you talk a little bit about the BAKE framework?
Sure. And there's a holiday backstory to that as well that kind of plays into the analogy. My dad has heard me over the past year talk a lot about another friend who makes sourdough bread, how much I love this friend. His name is Jeff also, by the way, Jeff Sourdough Bread. And my dad bought me a sourdough bread making kit for the holidays. I also love that gift. Sorry, Dad, that wasn't
number one. Sweet potatoes and peach.
That was the number one. Maybe I should say they were tied. But the thing is, okay, I've got the kit.
Yeah.
Have I made any sourdough yet? No, because any great baker will tell you you got to make the starter. There's a bunch of stuff you have to get comfortable with. It's not about having the tool. And I was thinking a lot about this idea of, for those of us who are not familiar with AI literacy, you are probably familiar with trying to bake or cook something. Yeah. And there's a lot of similarities in terms of you need to have some patience.
Patience is key, especially in baking.
Especially in baking. And then also Jeff, I know that you and your wife actually get really creative in the kitchen. You have to understand the palate of the person you're preparing something for. Your wife loves making kombucha. She probably has a much more acquired taste for good kombucha than somebody that's never had it. So thinking through who is this for? We do this in the kitchen. We do this as teachers. We've got to start applying that to AI literacy as well. And so the BAKE framework, I thought, it's easy to remember. It's going to remind people the thinking mindsets that you have when you're baking or cooking, these are applicable here.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of hoping that would be a useful tool.
Yeah, I love that. And over the next 3 episodes, starting with today's episode, we're going to be diving into kind of looking at the BAKE framework through 3 questions that Tricia and I have heard over and over again for the last year. And even the trainings that we've done already this year, we're coming back to these 3 questions. These seem to be the 3 pain points, if you will, right now in education. Those questions are, how do we talk about AI without it turning into an argument? We're hearing more and more of that. What does AI literacy actually look like in the classroom? And how do we move forward when staff confidence is all over the place when it comes to AI? And so over the next 3 episodes, starting with today, we're going to break down each one of these questions. We're going to be looking at them kind of through this BAKE mindset lens. And the BAKE mindset framework stands for balance, adaptability, knowledge sharing, and empathy. So we're going to be looking at these 3 questions over the next 3 episodes. I hope you join us. I hope you come back. I hope you leave us some comments on, is this working for you? What do you think about this? But in today's episode, we're going to dive into this idea of how do we talk about AI without it turning into an argument? And Tricia, both you and I, especially last year, at the end of last year, spent a lot of time with leaders. And this is one of their biggest concerns is like every time I bring up AI, I've got some of my staff are saying, I'm not going to touch it because of environmental concerns. I've got other part of my staff that say, I don't want to trust it because I know it hallucinates. And then I've got another part of my staff that's like, this thing is the best thing since sliced bread. How do we bring it into our schools? What are some of those mindsets that you're thinking about as a leader trying to lead this work needs to have within that BAKE framework?
And that's where, starting with balance, there is nothing that is 100% good, right? All technology has its pros and its cons. And so when we get that question around, like, how can I explore this without it turning into an argument? And this is not to say that we shouldn't argue in education. Of course, we need to have, listen to different perspectives, but we want to make sure that we're moving forward together. And I think that starts with understanding different people have totally different concerns around this. Let's not pretend like AI is going to be 100% amazing and good.
Yeah.
Are there ways that I could use AI as an educator that would devalue the intelligence of my students? Yes, indeed, there are. And you could say the same for, when I first went one-to-one in the classroom.
Right.
Were there some cons? Absolutely. Were there some pros? Yes. And I think it's acknowledging we're going to have to admit where those negatives are, talk about, well, what does it mean for us to avoid them? I'm glad, Jeff, that you brought up the environmental concerns, because even that's an issue where there's so much mis and disinformation around that. And I would say, okay, know that that is a concern for your staff. And let's dig into the research and let's see what we actually know about that.
And let's find ways to mitigate it. Like, how can we even mitigate it, right? There's ways that we know that making video and making images takes more power than text, right? And so even understanding that, and how do you mitigate the environmental impact? Everything has an environmental impact, but how do you mitigate your environmental impact? I think is a great question and understanding to do.
And getting clarity around everything does have an environmental impact. Let's look at this actually in the context and compare it to some other things, and maybe that's a whole other episode, but I think when it's sort of okay, let me acknowledge some staff have raised this. Let's do some learning around this and understand part of what is their obstacle. And I guess maybe that leans more into the empathy, that empathy piece, really knowing when you're hearing from people, what is it that they're worried about? What are they concerned about? Address it. Don't hide from it, and see what you can do to figure that out.
Yeah. I also think about this idea around adaptability. And as leaders, as we're leading through this massive shift, and this is a change. And again, these happen all the time. I talk about this all the time. We're going through another transition. Transitional technologies come up about every 10 to 15 years. This is a transitional technology. And for better or for worse, you are a school leader, and a school leader being everything from a superintendent to a teacher of their classroom. You are a school leader who happens to be in the spot that you are as we're going through another transition. And transitions are always rocky. There's never been a transition that it was just like, oh, cut and dry and off we go again. We're always trying to take what we know to be good and figure out how do we take something new and bring it together, right? And to me, that's the adaptability piece. I can't be so rigid to think that AI is going away. It's not. We tried to pretend that the internet was going away. It never did. We tried to pretend that social media was a fad. It's not. We are now in this situation where I think we have gotten past that as we get into 2026 to understand like, okay, AI is here. And now we have to be in this idea of how do we adapt to this landscape? And when we talk about adaptability, I think that brings up this idea you have to be playful. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be able to share failure along with successes. And to me, all of that as a leader, how are you providing that for whoever it is you lead? How are you showing them the good and the bad? How are you standing up and saying, I tried to use AI this way and it completely wouldn't do it? Like, or this completely screwed up, or it didn't work. And I think all of that goes into that idea of being adaptable in the moment and also gets into the knowledge sharing piece.
If you're a school leader right now, AI probably feels complicated. You don't want to panic, you don't want to ignore it, and you definitely don't want to lose staff trust by making the wrong call too fast. Great leaders we talk to aren't asking, what AI tools should we use? They're asking instead, how do I lead this well?
Here's the reframe that's helped a lot of schools slow things down in a productive way. AI literacy isn't a rollout problem, it's a leadership puzzle. The schools that are struggling most don't lack policies or platforms. What they're missing is a shared way of thinking when the answers aren't clear yet.
That's exactly why we built a framework we call BAKE. It's not a checklist. It's a mindset-first framework that helps leadership teams make calm, consistent decisions even while the technology keeps changing, because it is going to keep changing.
BAKE stands for balance, adaptability, knowledge sharing, and empathy. These 4 mindsets give schools shared language, so teachers aren't guessing and leaders aren't constantly putting out fires.
And here's the good news. We start the way all great learning starts, with questions. In your next conversation, you might want to ask, are we balancing learning and responsibility? Are we staying adaptable? Are we sharing what we're learning? And are we leading with empathy?
You don't need perfect answers to lead AI well. You need a steady leadership stance. BAKE gives schools that stance, so AI literacy becomes thoughtful, humane, and sustainable. This work is supported through Shifting Schools alongside K-12 leaders who want to move forward together without panic and without pretending this is simple. If this sounds like you, you're not behind, you're doing the work of leadership. And we hope that you join us for some BAKE sessions coming soon.
And I think I'm really glad you brought up being playful. And this is where I think you can really put a spotlight on your adaptability by intentionally giving yourself and your community a few experiments.
Yeah.
Jeff, we are in, I think, what is like the most exciting moment of NFL season. I'm really excited about this weekend. And I think I told you at the start of this season, I wanted to see how far I could use generative AI to actually forecast what's going to happen in the playoffs. And that experiment failed. It didn't go very well. But what I learned along the way was, well, actually, if I do research, I work on my bot and I just focus in not on the whole league, which is massive, which, there's so many different factors.
And variables,
And variables. But if I focus in on either a specific team or a specific game, this is not to say like I've built this foolproof prediction model. But it got way better. And that learning for me was, building something that is for a specific use case is going to do much better than asking it to take on this huge challenge, which, by the way, also this is true in life, right? Like, how can I be focused, have a very specific goal in mind rather than go for something that's like totally unattainable? And that was fun for me, right? Like I was not expecting to win millions of dollars in like sports gambling. That was not my goal, but I just wanted to play around with this.
Yeah. And I think that all comes to this idea, right? Of trying to answer this question about how do we talk about AI without it turning into an argument. I think about we've got to understand that everybody's coming at it from a different perspective, and your perspective is your perspective. How do we make sure we are knowledge sharing on what is truth is, and especially today's age, there's so much disinformation out there, and they call it AI slop, all this AI stuff that's being created around it as well. But how can we slow down and get back to a mindset of we know how to verify information, we know, and it takes time, which is why nobody likes to do it, right? Again, it's that patience part of baking. Nobody likes to go out and triangulate data when it comes at you. It's just way too easy to read headlines today. But this might be a place where we're going to have to slow down, and we're going to have to look at the research behind the environmental impact. We're going to have to look at the research on what are ways that this can be used for good and for bad on critical thinking within our classrooms. And there's research to support both based on how you set it up and how you're using AI in the moment. And I love that you brought up this idea of the adaptability piece is one of the things that you and I wrote down on the document here when it came to adaptability that I loved, is this idea of adjusting as the landscape changes. And I keep thinking that we're living in a time where the change is outpacing any of us keeping up. I mean, I kept saying we were doing a training earlier this week with a school on Copilot. They're using Copilot at their school. In 1 week in November, Microsoft dropped 13 updates just to Copilot. I mean, nobody can keep up with this stuff, right? And that was just Copilot. And so this idea of being adaptable in the moment is you have to be able to say, that's what was true yesterday, but something's changed, right? Yesterday, it wouldn't write me an email. Today, it'll write me an email. Yesterday, it was hallucinating 70% of the time. Today, it's only hallucinating 5% of the time, or whatever the number happens to be. We have to continue to adjust and be able to be open. And how do we create mindsets that are open to understanding my truth today might not be truth tomorrow? And that is something that we constantly as educators try to do with our students. Our students come with mindsets, and part of our job as good teachers is to say, yeah, that's the truth you're coming into my classroom with. Let's build on that truth, or let's push back against that truth and help you grow in maybe a new truth as we learn together.
I think, your point about this takes time, that is crucial. And that's where, one of the guides that we have shared, and you and I have both used it in multiple trainings, we have this collection of 4 corners conversation starters. The free guide, we'll link it in the show notes. It's about exploring people's attitudes about AI. And the one that I will use very often in trainings is you got 4 corners you can pick from. And the provocation is, would you let AI pick a month's worth of entertainment for your family? And what's meant by that is, if you've got a streaming service, they're always saying, this is recommended for you. This is what you should watch next. Would you, as an experiment, just go with that for a month? And so it's really interesting to have adult learners talk through. Is it like, oh yeah, immediately I would do that? Absolutely not. Yes, I might try it with a caveat, or I need to think about it a little bit more. I'll often have a group of educators talk that through, and then I'll share with them. Well, actually, according to Netflix's own internal research, 80% of what's viewed is based on their algorithmic recommender system.
Yeah.
And so it gets us thinking about, if I'm already doing this, actually, maybe I should do the experiment to see, does anybody else in my family notice?
Yeah.
Or do I notice my own tastes being, altered? All of those kinds of things. And that is a longer conversation to have, but it's got more insight on the other side of it. So that point about, do we give each other time? Do I give myself time to see my own opinion change and shift? And that, again, you've got to slow things down in order to understand.
Yeah. And I even as you're talking about this, I think about, when ChatGPT was first released, in November of 2022. I tell this story all the time. You came to me like the beginning part of December and you were just like, have you played with this thing? This thing's incredible. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be. And you said to me, you said, this is going to be something. And I was just like, nah, I think this is going to be like VR headsets. Everybody's going to talk about it and it's not going to go anywhere. And that was literally my mindset until about January when you and I were in a meeting and you were showing me this stuff. And I actually went over and set up my first ChatGPT account and started playing with it for myself. I had to be okay with what I thought I knew and what the reality of what I was seeing and what this thing was doing and now where it has gone is completely different, right?
I mean, and that's the thing, like we don't know what we don't know. And that's the problem. And I think what's great though is this is another reminder of how much we need to be in conversation with one another. I mean, Jeff, I think this is where you and I have been doing this podcast together for a while. And it's like, I don't do the podcast with you because we just always agree, right? Yeah. Like, and I think you can apply that to school. Is the point of school to get everybody in a space where they all just are yes people to one another? There's no learning there.
Yeah.
But in that story, you mentioned you paused and you tried it out. Yeah. And I think this is, like you said, we ask students to do that all the time. Okay, even if you don't think, are you willing to pause?
Yeah.
Are you willing to take a moment?
Consider.
And I think sometimes consider. Are you willing to consider? And crucially, what does considering look like for you?
I love that.
Because, and I think young learners are almost better at that.
Yeah.
If you're an adult, what does considering, and ask your friends, ask your family, how do they know if you're really considering something versus just saying you're considering something?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. I love that. Such a great word. Are you willing to consider something? Are you willing to just stop and think and walk away for a minute, take it for yourself, play with it by yourself, see what happens, right? I think those are all great, just great things. So we're talking about this idea of just arguments inside schools and trying to make sure that, everybody, that we understand that everybody's coming at this from a new, whatever their perspective happens to be, which happens all the time with technology and happens in schools all the time anyway. Like everybody's got their own perspective on what education should be and the best way to teach kids. Like this is not new to us, but I think we need to frame the mindset in that around AI. If we can stay focused, as you said at the beginning, if we can stay focused on the mindset around the tool, and we stay focused on the mindset of how learning happens, the tool will figure itself out. We will find a way to use it in the right ways, but we have to stay mindset focused.
And I think, it's a great chance for you to get to know your colleagues, because I think it's sort of, you could ask them like, what is a technology that you own? Tell me the story actually of like why you own that. Because I feel like friends I have who they've spent way more money on their coffee machine than I have. There's a story about actually like why they love that ritual of making morning coffee. You have already talked a lot about, you love building things. You love making things. And it's often like you love doing that for other people. So I feel like there's even a great conversation to have around what is a technology that's in your house? What's the story behind why you love doing that thing?
Oh, I love that.
Because I think, you and I experiment with different AI tools all the time. And it's not just for the sake of AI. I've been experimenting. We'll do a different episode about Notebook LM's infographic feature. And I've put a lot of time into that technology, not just for the sake of playing around with a tool, but I'm genuinely interested in this idea of information architecture and how you can present things differently in order to have a different level of understanding. That's mindset first.
And we talk about making learning visible. And here's a tool that supports making learning visible, right? Like there's just a lot of things, I think, to your point of you play with a tool, but you're playing with it through these different mindsets, right? And if we can play with these tools through a different mindset, right? Through a mindset of, I'm going to try it out. It might work for me. It might not. What does that look like? Or it's not everything that I do with this tool. And I love this because, a lot of times I think teachers are used to going into PD sessions, understanding that whoever's coming to present my PD session or whatever, you're not going to take everything out of that PD session. Very rarely do I go to a conference or I'm in a PD session where I'm getting everything. But there's always that one little thing, right? There's that, that's an interesting tidbit. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, I wonder what happens if I think about this differently. We have to have that same mindset around AI. It's not a silver bullet. It's not fixing education. It's not destroying education, but there are nuances to it that if you're willing to play with the nuances to it, become very, very fascinating and interesting. And I think as every educator is a lifelong learner, I hope that you can have the mindset around what are the little things I can start to play with and be interested in and maybe even consider. As Tricia and I are going through this over the next couple weeks, we also want to give other avenues for you listeners and our audience and our community here at Shifting Schools to dig into this with us and bring your voices into this as well. So over on the website, we're going to have more information. Please head over to shiftingschools.com where you'll find more information. But we have a couple different ways that you can help and support us and bring this idea of this bake mindset to your school. We're going to have as little as we will send you an email every week for 4 weeks, or options for you to bring Tricia and I into your school community to maybe do this on a larger level. All that information is going to be over there at the Shifting Schools website. We're very excited. We're going to be focused on this for the next couple months. You're going to probably get tired of us talking about baking and having all kinds of baking references. But hopefully maybe you're going to bake more at home because of it as well here maybe you'll consider baking more at home here as we start. And we're going to hear more about purple potatoes too. I've got a feeling. So that's great.
And hopefully that sourdough bread. Hopefully that
sourdough bread.
Happens.
Yeah. So head over to Shifting Schools and please join us next week while we're going to be talking through these 3 questions. Next week, we're going to be taking on the question of what does AI literacy actually look like in the classroom? So please join us next week. Really appreciate you, Tricia. Great as always to be able to catch up with you in the new year. And until next time, we'll see you on the network. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. And you probably already know this, but the hardest part of AI in schools isn't the technology, it's leading the change. You're not looking for hype, you're not waiting for a silver bullet, and you're definitely not interested in rolling something out just to say you did. That's the kind of leadership we work with at Shifting Schools.
The BAKE framework exists for leaders like you who get it. Clarity matters more than speed, trust matters more than tools, and pretending that you are certain helps no one. The BAKE framework is not a program you adopt, it's a shared stance you lead from, one that helps your team make sense of AI together without panic. If today's podcast resonated with you, great, you're already doing the work the BAKE framework is designed to support. And if you want language and structure and strategies for the kind of leadership you're already practicing, come learn more about the BAKE framework at shiftingschools.com.